So we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and we have somebody who's really transformed the financial world continuously, is trying to just empower so many different women in the financial space, and started with really humble beginnings, not $1.5 million in the 90s, and built up a huge empire in the financial space today. So definitely great to have you here, Jenny. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here too.
Great. So I'd love to start with early life. When you were a kid, did you aspire to be somebody in the financial space and lead a financial powerhouse? Was that your goal, or did you even think about anything like that?
Oh gosh, no. I definitely didn't. I grew up in Wisconsin, and for me, just the big idea was to move to Chicago. That was it. It didn't matter what I was going to do as long as I could be part of the big city. And when I went to the University of Michigan, I interviewed at companies. I went to the business school undergraduate, and all I did, if it said Chicago, I interviewed there. Didn't really matter what the job was. So I definitely got lucky on how that all turned out.
Mhm. Nice. Yeah. Did you kind of like how did you get your start essentially once you got in? So like once you're on this trading floor, like what were you doing to kind of progress there?
hmm So at the time, actually, it's kind of funny because I didn't even know I was going to a trading floor.
Mhm.
So where I interviewed was, it actually was one of our old offices as PEAK6 for a little while. And so I met the people. And the most intriguing thing to me was that they had food, because that was kind of new at the time,
Yeah.
and they were casual, which most people weren't casual at the time when I was coming out of school. So, and they had beer and Haagen-Dazs in the fridge. So I was like, I am so there. But I didn't know what options were. I might have had like a half a chapter in a finance book that talked about it at the time. So I didn't know I was going to get into the options world. And so the first day I was given a jacket to put on, and it has, a little badge on there which shows the name of the firm. So the company I started working for was a very famous company in the options industry, O'Connor and Associates. And we went down to the trading floor, and Drexel Burnham had declared bankruptcy. And so literally they sat me on the stoop, like, of the floor, and left me there the whole day.
Oh my
Never came
gosh.
back. I never had lunch. And then, we always laughed because there were so few bathrooms for women. It was like, that was too far away. So I was like, I don't know. What if they need me? Right. Of course they didn't need me. That's the joke of it all. But, so I was down on the trading floor, and at the time, right, everything was manual. It makes me sound a million years old. You would write tickets, and then tickets would go like into, looks like a track, and you send the ticket and it goes off, and somebody types it in somewhere else. So my job was really to help the current traders with their positions and learn how to trade. But even at the time, it took us, I remember, 7 weeks before I was allowed to answer the phone. Because to know all the symbols and understand, because the talk was so fast. And of course, in many places there was hand signals. Mostly what I did was not hand signals, because it was in the equity pits, not the index pit. But right, each step and layer took a ton of time. Whereas, we'll teach kids in, a couple of weeks, all the stuff. It took me months and months to learn. But what I didn't know at the time was first of all, how fun it was going to be, right?
Yeah.
Like, every day was like being at like a sporting event, right? The big house at Michigan, it's not quite that big, but like there are thousands and thousands of people down there, mostly men, of course, at the time. It's huge, 60-foot ceilings. And it's just roaring with excitement every day. And when it wasn't, they were usually doing something stupid, like some trick or something, some stupid bet in the corner. But I still say it's one of the best working years of my career, for two reasons. One, because I learned so much, even though in retrospect it was slow learning. And the other was, it was so tangible, like it was so physical to be part of that experience. What is somebody doing that they want this transaction, that they're calling somebody on a phone to get to a broker who's running to a pit in the floor, who's talking to these traders who I was learning to become one, and say, how can I buy and sell this thing? Right. And then that whole unwind it back to the customer, and hopefully have a trade be made, and then do it with lots of different names at the same time, lots of different strikes, lots of different months, right? So people yelling and screaming to get all these different things all done at one time, and then know what your risk is, and then hedge your risk. So The funny thing is, years later, we do this all with technology, but even when we first started PEAK6, we thought you have to experience that to actually know what's going on. Turns out you didn't really, but felt like so important at the time to be like physically part of your job, not just sort of mentally part of your job. But anyway, so I think we were super lucky to be part of that world. It also kind of isolated you, because it turns out there was a whole nother world called the over-the-counter equity derivative world, which I eventually got to be part of as well, where it's companies and their CFOs and their financial departments talking to large banks or large funds, talking to these large banks and doing derivative transactions that are just multiple times bigger than any transaction that was happening on the trading floor. So, there was a whole nother world, even though I was part of what seemed like a small world. But there was a much bigger world out there as well. And so each one of these stages and these steps was completely unknown to me. What I love to tell people is, like, I didn't know I could say no. So I ended up taking a lot of risks,
Right.
because somebody else saw something in me. Now, mind you, of course, I believe that at the time there were so few women doing it that I was either noticeable for that, or like, let's give her a try because we have to give her a try type of thing. But eventually they picked up on that I was okay at my job, that I was doing a pretty good job, even though I didn't necessarily believe in myself to do that next job. And so saying yes was far more valuable than saying no, even if I wasn't sure that I necessarily wanted that next job, right? So we go from trading on the floor to then trading, well, at the time it wasn't really trading off floor because it didn't really exist yet, to managing off floor, to eventually actually go to be a trader back on the floor again. So there was sort of layers into that, to a couple other jobs, which then led me to this over-the-counter equity derivative world, which I think in composite, I was taking a bunch of risks in a bunch of ways at a young age. And we also talk about something called compound experience. So like compound interest, right? I have my principal, I get my interest. When I reinvest and I get interest on my interest, I get exponential growth in my money. And really, this compound experience, each one of these experiences very young in my career, allowed me to have exponential growth as I took each one and moved to the next level. I mean, I never dreamed I was going to start a company. That wasn't even a thing. People didn't talk about that, right? There were people who did it. It wasn't going to be me. Why would I? I had a job I really enjoyed, but our bank moved. They moved the headquarters to Connecticut and said, do you want to move? And my co-founder and myself, we weren't planning on moving, mostly for family reasons, for each a little bit different, but mostly family reasons. And if I could have moved, I would have, right? So starting PEAK6 was, well, what am I going to do now that my company isn't here anymore? Type of deal, right? So,
and you built up enough of a track record as of that point that you were able to go and like procure investment, a $1.5 million investment like that was possible because you had so many different experiences. Like, how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, for sure. I think, again, super lucky because I had we had a handful of partners from O'Connor who invested in us. And then my co-founder had some relationships and they invested. So I think there was, gosh, I can't even remember exactly the number anymore, maybe seven to 10 people that actually invested. And we had a little bit of our own money saved, even though we were in our 20s. We had, we were in the trading business. We did get some bonuses, so we were able to use our money ourselves as well. But we didn't go very far to get that. And again, to the point, work hard for somebody else that hopefully they want to encourage you, even though you might be going on your own somewhere else. I think, keeping it close versus going out and reaching out too far too fast was probably to our advantage. Now, we also got a little bit lucky. So we did our first trade July 23rd of 1997 as our standalone entity. And we made our first $1 million in October of that year.
Wow.
So
pretty quick.
Yeah, pretty quick. So we were definitely lucky. So we didn't have to go back to the till at all. And then we were super conscientious about we kept costs extremely low, or we've been known to be really brutal about that, and didn't pay ourselves except for when we, had to pay taxes, and we didn't have access anywhere at all. That helped us a lot in thinking about what was truly required. I remember when we had it was our first holiday, right? And we're going to have a holiday party for, I think there was probably 7 or 8 of us. I was like, we can't do that. And my co-founder's like, well, I'll just pay for it. I go, no, you can't just pay for it. I go, just because you can pay for it because you might have had some money from your old job. What if we can't do it again? We set a precedent. Like, we should not do this. So, I mean, we went back and forth. And finally we ended up doing like something small, but it was, again, it was all in context of what can we do? How can we do it in the most effective way and defensive way so that we can survive? And even thinking about what surviving meant at the time, it really was about having enough money to live. It wasn't about creating, it's not about how people think about it today at all, because that wasn't, the internet wasn't giving me all those fantasies. I just wanted to survive. So I had a 1-year-old. So, and if I think, we later on, we got some reputation about our cost, being cost too, too cost conscious in many ways. Right. But I think I wouldn't undo that, because at a minimum, I can always open up, the purse a little bit more if I have to, but it better just start this way, start a little bit tighter and go looser than it is to start loose and then have to tighten it mentally for the people who are there. That's a really hard, backwards, mentally for them.
How did you develop your own proprietary angle early on? Like, you limited resources. It seems like that is a core aspect of the PEAK6 business now, is you have your own proprietary software and, and et cetera. Like, so how did you kind of come up with the initial start of that?
Yeah, there's some funny stories about that. The first of all, like a ton of credit goes to the people who educated us at O'Connor and Associates. They were brilliant at what they did, and they took people who knew nothing and they taught us how to manage risk. So that we always had sort of in our back pocket, or that sort of knowledge base and understanding, right? We may not make the most money, but we're not going to lose our shirts, which is what typically, often happened. There was a lot of trading firms at the time. As technology got bigger and bigger, there were fewer trading firms. But we actually, our first technology was off the shelf. And what people were known for at the time was being great mathematicians, for sure. That was just starting to not be the case when we were coming in, but very early on, any options trading was really known for that. And when we took off the shelf software and then started winning, it wasn't at all about the way historically people approach options trading. We took a totally different approach. We actually looked at, it was Walgreens initially was our model. Okay. Is what we were thinking about, and Walmart, which is it's strange when you talk about options trading and putting those two together. Very different. So what happened was we start trading. You have to trade on the trading floor. Slowly there's some exchange technology that's happening. And as we had made that first $1 million and we had hired our first couple people, when we were getting to 10 people, I was like, we can't hire any more people because we don't know how to manage them. And then the other big problem was that you had to go and be on the exchanges. So I was like, well, we certainly can't manage somebody who's in New York or Philly or San Francisco where the exchanges are. There's fewer exchanges at the time. So we're going to have to do something differently. And as we were figuring that out, we met a gentleman who said, well, you can use technology to do that. And I was like, oh, wait, I can use technology and then I hire so many people. I'm like, I am in. In fact, I put our first server together. So anything I could do to not get myself into predicament that I knew I probably couldn't, get myself out of. And so we started to use technology. We were one of the first off-floor exchange traded equity options traders ever. Now, I don't think anybody knows the actual, but we were super early on in doing that. And that technology then allowed us to see our positions in a different way than historically we had been able to. Now, there certainly was technology at O'Connor as well. There was technology. It's just how good the technology was and how you actually physically made the execution of the trade. And so as we were physically changing the execution of the trade, not having to be on the exchange floor, we were also seeing in our screens, better technology, better and better technology. And as we started to see it, I thought, well, at the time, there was this idea of I can't, as a physical trader, trade more than 40 names. That's how I grew up, at least. And so you were a trader, you might be standing in a pit and you're in the IBM pit, but there are, let's call it 10 other stock names that are showing up there, 3 that are more active, but some on the side that are smaller. I don't know if it's 10 or not in a pit. I can't really remember anymore. But then you would have responsibility for several other pits and other stock names. So let's call it you were responsible as a seniorist trader for 30 to 40 names. Well, as we started to use technology, we're like, well, why only 40 names? It seems like I can do a lot more.
Right.
So we kept pushing on our traders who hated it. And all of a sudden it started to look like inventory to us. So it didn't really matter that it wasn't toothbrushes and makeup and magazines. It's just options inventory on different stocks. So I have some of these technology stocks, I have some of these consumer stocks, and so we got this idea around an inventory manager, and Walgreens, and then of course Walmart, and eventually Amazon would sort of come into view. And at one point, there's a very famous gentleman in our business who came over and he said, what are you guys doing? And he was trying to figure out like the 4th decimal point, the true value of an option. And we were like, we're just using this model that we just bought. We're not doing anything. It was just how we were organizing and constructing a portfolio, but in big size. And so, we went from, 40 names per trader to 400 names per trader pretty quickly. And eventually, right, you're going to cap out at some point. And what are your strategies? And then the other big thing was historically, Wall Street's set up by industries. So you're in the consumer industry, you're in the, the real estate, or you're in technology, or whatever it is. And we didn't see that it had to be organized in that way. So we organized our strategies and therefore our traders differently than historically would see it. And that's even something we don't really even talk so much about today out loud, but using the technology in that way, I could frame the rows in the store, right? And then the front of the store and the end caps of the store very differently than if I had just people doing it. So it was, I think, the biggest thing that I learned as a human, like what was natural for me as an entrepreneur. And I think that's where I see really interesting ideas come to fruition, is where I didn't want more people because I didn't think I had that skill. So what skill do we have, right? The fact that technology came along was super fortuitous. We definitely got lucky, time and place. But I was also, I talk about, my co-founder is sort of brilliant top down, and we always used to be more bottoms up. Now, of course, I've had to change that over the years, but he was top down and I was bottoms up, and I couldn't figure out a way to organize differently, except for in a model I had seen before. And so bringing that model into our world, people really hadn't done. And I also said, for me, it was very visual, the way I should be looking at this data that's coming into me. And I'm a very right brain person. In fact, my grandpa, before he passed away, I was like 17, and he's like, you should go into architecture, because I was math, but I was also a good artist. And I was like, I felt like I was bringing my right brain into the left brain world by organizing all of this inventory of options differently than it had been in the past. And but the biggest message really was trusting who I am approaching the problem versus if somebody else was approaching the problem. And then the other big thing for me was having partners. So my co-founder to start with, that we had complementary skills. We
Mm.
really truly had complementary skills. And then our first employee, we always used to call us the three legs of the stool because he had different skills. Now we'd all come from the same place. We all had, you know, a really strong foundation options, which we cannot dismiss at all. That is minimum, you know, 60, 70% of the problem. But on top of that, how are we going to look at this market differently than other people had? And, you know, fortuitously fell into the tech side because a gentleman we met who then ends up being our partner for over 20 years, which is amazing. But that whole decision to do this, approaching the all of the options inventory as literally as inventory, sort of change the trajectory of who we are and also how we look at other businesses. Because we're not afraid to say, well, I see what that business is, but if I could do it differently, or if I could apply a different business model, how would it look? How could I do that? How could I apply the Southwest business model to my business or whatever it is, right? Something that's totally different and unique in a different industry. If I tried that model here, how would it look? And it just gives you a chance to play and open your mind up inside this box, especially the box of trading, which was very clearly about math and eventually about tech, but definitely about math, but then tech in what ways? And then how would I use tech differently than other people? So
Do you think that pokers enable you to have a higher risk tolerance because of your experience with poker?
So I don't know if you know this, but I didn't play poker all of those years.
Oh, so it's
And
something that happened after.
yeah, it was something that
So
happened
funny.
after. And yeah, which is kind of incredible. I say if I had learned poker sooner, I
Uh-huh.
probably would have saved myself 10 years of fails.
Really?
Yeah, for sure. And I only learned it because of my daughter in 2019. And that's why I've been on this massive poker kick since then, because I
Yeah.
started to learn it. I was like, wait a second. Wait, when I started learning, I was like, I'm just learning card game. And it turns out that, you know, her dad was watching a tennis match and it was, she's not winning, but a very good athlete and should have been winning, and came home and he was super frustrated. It's like, she may as well be hitting against a wall. She may as well be hitting with her teacher. She doesn't realize she's playing against someone and needs to strategize based on what's going on in the game. And then
Right.
he threw up his hands. He's like, she needs to learn to play poker. And I was like, yeah, whatever. He's not a poker player. He was a blackjack guy. So I just kind of ignored it. And like 2 weeks later, I was like, should we teach? And she was 14. Should we teach our 14-year-old daughter to play poker? And because it sounded so strange. So I have four kids, 3 boys and a girl. And of course they already knew how to play. I don't even know how they knew how to play. And so we did an experiment and with her friends and their moms. And as as we all started to learn, I was like, what I couldn't believe was the confidence that it was giving the girls. That was the big thing that I was all in on, right? Well, as I started to learn more and more, I was like, wait a sec, that looks like that meeting I was in. That looks like that deal I just did.
Huh.
That looks like in this, and we started using the framework of poker internally when we would talk about things. Like, what do you think? You're playing like you think they have a pair of queens. And I'm like, they definitely are Jack 9 offsuit. Like, I don't even get it. And they're like under the gun. That you're playing like they're in the dealer position. I don't understand. And you think they have that size of a chip stack? I was like, and also we started talking like this, and it grounded everybody somewhere, that it made it really easy to discuss how we were all talking about the same thing, but seeing it differently. And so as I started to do that more and more, I was like, the confidence building, and then the framework, and then wait a sec, I'm really talking about power and money at the poker table. And, you know, in these situations, I was like, this is brilliant for women. Because now I can practice doing it without actually being there and screwing it up all those times like I did. I was like, if I practice this more, I can get much better at it, or I can at least be aware of where I might have made a mistake, because I might still make the mistake. But now I'm like, I see that mistake several times, right? I keep playing that King's 7 offsuit in that position, in that part of the game. What the hell am I doing? And women don't have a place to practice doing that. And so my practice was just in my business, like losing a, a hell of a
Right.
lot of money over and over and over again to learn my lessons back to my compound experience. Right. And I think it's like there's a brilliant opportunity, especially right. So at Poker Bar, where it's a safe place for women to come together, all different ages, all different seniority levels, all learning the game because nobody knows how to play. We're talking well over 110-ish million people in the world that play poker. Less than 7% are women. So,
Wow.
and young men have this opportunity, right, in just in gameplay and hobbies and things they do, where they're taking those small risks all the time. They get all that practice, same practice I was getting with options trading, right? So if you looked at our desks today and our portfolio of traders, I mean, we were winning low 50% of the time. We're losing 40 some odd percent of the time. Like you get really good at losing a lot. You just have to make more than you lose. But again, you get that same practice. And so all of a sudden it became a reflection of like, if women could do this, then we can get more, because I'm not going to get all those women to play to be in the options world. Hopefully we get some of them, but every, young girl, teen, grown woman can use a deck of cards and get around with a group of people. So do you play poker, by the way?
Yeah, I mean a bit. I mean, I don't play like too professionally at all, but I've done some like casino poker. But since I was a kid, I was always playing it. My dad was into poker, so I've had that experience. I'll tell you, my sisters never really played much at all. It was only the guys really, except I have
I'm
one
sure.
younger sister that plays a bit. But yeah,
Actually, well,
pretty spot on.
we would love to teach her and her friends, and we obviously do a ton of stuff, a lot of mother daughter, a lot of father daughter, but more importantly, like we've gotten into companies now where we've just hit over 200 companies that we've taught at, largest tech firms, largest banks, law firms in the country. I mean, literally every day. We don't have to call anybody because everyone has gotten wind of what's going on, and but our goal is to teach 1 million women.
Right.
And we're not going to get there teaching, hundreds and thousands at a time. So we recently built an app. Well, we're building an app for almost 2 years now. We recently launched it. And so that's our opportunity now, right? To get out more people. So hopefully people will be seeing us more and more.
Yeah. Oh, agreed. Just the last question I have, you've really changed the landscape in a sense for and set a standard for what a female entrepreneur can do in the United States. You're in a rare class of 20 or so that have achieved the status that you have. How do you see how do you want to help in terms of, you have the poker initiative, but how do you think you're going to start like a new wave of other female entrepreneurs to follow suit? Do you think it's an educational problem that maybe that women haven't been given the same educational opportunities? Like, what do you think are some of the changes that need to occur besides just the poker initiative?
Yeah. So we tried for a long time to get women into our company. So PEAK6 today is about 2,000 people, and we've either started or bought and turned around more than 15 companies. So it goes up and it goes down over time. But in particularly the fintech arena is where we have, so finance, tech, or the mixture, the most difficulty in getting women. And so we have failed many times trying to figure out how to solve this problem. Our biggest win was about 7 years ago. We started this thing called the Women's Trading Experience. We are the only people who do it. And we bring in a class of women each year. And it's gone so well that we started filming it very early on. It was just incredible, the what they were learning, how they felt, and what the opportunity could lead to for them. If nothing else, if they never even came into this business, just opening their eyes, right? So they come in for 8 to 10 weeks in the summer. And we say, if you're smart, you're curious, and you're hardworking, that's the only skills you need to bring to this, because we can show you about this product, right? So we have internship programs across PEAK6, but I'm talking about one in particular. And the reason I talk about this one, because for me, it's all about being at the money table. It's all about capital allocation. So the difference between a woman where she is today and some dreams at where she wants to be in the future is money. Like there's nothing really else in their way. They have all the skills. What they don't have is those money skills, and included in those money skills is the risk-taking skills. So what we were able to do with the women's trading experience, and then it became women's tech experience, is say, okay, here's this product in the financial arena, options. It's like the far right of the curve. And I'd always said, if you could understand this product, you can sit at any table in any industry at any level and talk money. Now, you're going to have to put some effort into it. It's not going to be just one summer and then you're able to do it. But at least you're open. You're open to the idea, and also know, right? It's not just about being conversational in money. It's about going to that next level. So for us, that's where, ironically, 7 years ago, we started this program, and we were teaching poker. But we were teaching poker because, our guys here love to play, and it was a good filler of time, because we had said every hour of every day has to be planned for these women, so they feel like they are really learning something. And so we had already had this poker thing going on even before the Poker Power thing started, and then saw the success. So we're in the low 30% women capital allocators, which there is nobody who can touch us on that. Like even the largest banks in the world, like, yes, they have women, but they're not in those very particular positions. So my goal, like, I've been a quiet person for my whole career until one of our businesses, we were looking to SPAC, and so stuff came out. But what I always knew was, it's all about the money. It's all about being in or on the money. I don't care if you're a product person, you're a tech person, you're an administrative person, you're an operational person, whatever it is, you have to be connected to the money.
Yeah.
So you're not in trading. You're in fashion, you're in manufacturing, you're in real estate, whatever it is. If you're not connecting back to what you're doing, why you're doing, and how it's either going to make you money or save you money, you are not going to be in a seat of power. So it starts all the way down as a junior person, understanding, asking the questions, so you don't just execute what someone tells you to execute. So for me, it's getting women cognizant around, like, there is something natural about men's attraction to that money. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? And how am I doing it? And is it worth my time to be doing it? And it's something very similar to me when I started. I just said yes, right? I'll just do what you tell me to do. I got lucky because I was in an industry that taught me about money. Yes. So I wouldn't say I knew better. I'm trying to tell people, don't do what I did. I mean, do what I did, meaning saying yes, but be more aware than I was. And so if we can get women to that point, and for me, the way I think I can help women is talking about, you have the power to control your destiny here. If you don't connect yourself to the money, if you just dance around the money, right? If you don't practice the money, and for me, practice right now, if you can't do it at your job, you can do it at the poker table. You don't have to play for money to practice the money, right? You can play for the leaderboard. You can play to win, right? Like that's a whole new surprise, right? Actually playing to win. You have control. You can control your destiny and get to where you want to get to. But if you decide you're going to ignore the money, you're not going to get to where you want to be. So that is where hopefully I can help women change with the programs, with Poker Power, and with addressing, like, I've seen it for so many years now. I'm not a spring chicken. My daughter told me a few years ago, she goes, if you don't start talking soon, Mom, nobody's going to listen to you because you're going to be too old, which I thought was funny. But we need to be connected there. And the truth is, I tell this to male CEOs too. It is our responsibility to teach women. Mm-hmm. It is our responsibility to teach them, because when they come out of school, the men and women are equal in terms of their, obviously what they just experienced in their college base, but like, what did the guys have? What were they practicing along the way? So how do we teach our women? At PEAK6, you come in, you learn poker. Now it's across everybody. So.
Yeah. Well, Jenny, I appreciate you coming on. I think that, you've done so many wonderful things throughout your career, and you continue to inspire a lot of people. And I like that you've taken the initiative upon yourself to try to make and help more female CEOs become a thing and a reality, and through so many different aspects of that. So definitely commend the work that you do. And I appreciate it, and hope you continue to do a lot of wonderful things for not and have success and help other people become successful.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And you're certainly helping us do that by having people like myself on. So thank you.